You know, when you study the laws of physics, there is this deep comfort in how predictable everything is. It's soothing, really.
Oh, yeah, like gravity.
Exactly like gravity. You hold a rock out in front of you, you let it go, and it falls to the floor. It happens exactly the same way every single time, whether you are like a saint or a sinner. There's just no ambiguity.
Right, it's a constant.
But then you step out of the physics lab,
Right.
and you step into the realm of human dynamics. You walk into a workplace or a social circle or really any human hierarchy, and suddenly those laws of gravity just seem to completely reverse themselves.
Yeah, the rules completely change.
They do, because you can do exactly what you think is the right thing. I mean, you can work the hardest, be the smartest, throw the best party, deliver the most incredible results,
And instead of floating to the top, you just plummet to the absolute bottom.
yes, you find yourself totally ruined. And why is that? It's because while gravity is a constant, the human ego is basically a live grenade.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. And today, we are studying exactly how to keep that grenade from detonating in your face.
Yeah.
We are jumping into this deep dive into the source material, and our mission today is focusing on one foundational, brutal rule.
No, one.
Exactly. Law 1. Never outshine the master.
Which is, it's the ultimate paradox of human behavior, really. And it completely contradicts how we are raised.
Totally.
I mean, think about it. We are taught from a very young age to, do our best, shine, to show our work, to really stand out.
Yeah, the whole educational system is built on that premise of merit, like get the gold star.
Exactly. And yet, doing exactly that in the wrong environment, in front of the wrong person, it's the very thing that will trigger your absolute destruction.
Wow. So doing a good job can actually ruin you.
Oh, absolutely. We like to think that meritocracy is this clean, objective system, like a finely tuned scale. But in reality, that scale is rigged by the most volatile, unpredictable substance on Earth.
The human ego.
Precisely. The fragility of the human ego. At the top of any hierarchy, whether it's a 17th century royal court or a modern startup boardroom, you find deep-seated insecurities.
Right.
And the cardinal rule of power is that you must always make those above you feel comfortably superior.
Okay, it's that word right there, comfortably,
Yeah.
that carries so much weight. Okay, let's unpack this. Because in your desire to please or impress these people, right, if you go too far in displaying your talents, you might accomplish the exact opposite of what you intended.
You don't inspire admiration, you inspire fear.
Yeah, fear and insecurity. So the mandate is to make your masters appear more brilliant than they actually are. And only then will you attain the heights of power.
Right.
Now, to truly understand the gravity of this law, I think we need to begin with what not to do. We need to look at a spectacular failure.
Oh, we have a great one for this.
We do. A genuine masterclass in misreading your audience's ego. And this brings us to France in the year 1661.
Yeah, so 1661 is this pivotal, highly unstable moment in French history. We are dealing with King Louis XIV.
The Sun King, right.
Eventually, yes. He is known to history as the Sun King, the absolute monarch. But at this specific moment, he's only 22 years old.
Oh, wow. I always picture him as this older, established guy with a giant wig.
Right. But here he's just coming into his own. He is trying to consolidate his power after years of civil unrest, which was known as the Fronde. So the atmosphere in the court is incredibly tense.
That makes sense. A young boss trying to prove himself.
Exactly. And then the prime minister, a man named Jules Mazarin, he just dies. And this creates a massive, gaping power vacuum at the very top of the French government.
Right. And stepping into that spotlight, just eyeing that vacuum with intense anticipation, is Nicolas Fouquet.
Fouquet, yes.
Now, Fouquet is the finance minister for Louis XIV. And if you look at the historical record, this guy was not some dull bean-counting accountant.
No, not at all.
He was a vibrant, magnetic man. He was a patron of the arts. He loved lavish parties. I mean, he loved pretty women. He loved poetry.
He was essentially a 17th century playboy.
Exactly. A playboy who also happened to control the purse strings of a massive empire. And crucially, he loved money because he led an incredibly extravagant lifestyle.
Yeah, he was a man of immense taste and culture, and he knew it. He was clever. And up until this point, he really felt he had made himself entirely indispensable to the young king.
It felt secure.
Very secure. So when Prime Minister Mazarin dies, Fouquet naturally assumes that he is next in line for the throne, so to speak.
Like it's a lock.
Right. He expects to be named the Prime Minister. It just seems like the logical, undeniable next step in his glittering career. I mean, he has the connections, he has the money, he has the administrative experience.
But then a massive drop in cabin pressure occurs. The king doesn't promote Fouquet.
No, he doesn't.
In fact, the king decides to abolish the position of prime minister entirely.
Just imagine the psychological blow of that.
I would be devastated.
Right. It's not just that you didn't get the promotion, it's that the boss eliminated the role entirely just so he wouldn't have to give it to you.
Ouch.
And this decision, along with like a few other subtle freezes in communication, makes Fouquet suspect that he is falling out of favor.
The paranoia sets in.
Exactly. He is suddenly gripped by anxiety. He realizes he needs to do something drastic to solidify his position, to prove his worth, and, just get back into the king's good graces.
So Fouquet decides to solve this problem the only way he knows how. He decides to throw a party.
And what a party it was.
Oh my gosh, right. But not just any party. He decides to stage the most spectacular, mind-bendingly lavish party the world has ever seen.
He really goes all out.
The ostensible, official reason for this gathering is to commemorate the completion of Fouquet's brand new chateau, this estate called Vaux-le-Vicomte.
Right, but the real underlying function of the party is to pay tribute to the guest of honor, which is King Louis XIV.
It's a massive flex disguised as a tribute.
That is exactly what it is. Fouquet wants to show the king, look at the power, the wealth, the culture, and the connections I can mobilize. Don't you want a guy like me running your country?
Yeah, he's showing off his resume in real time.
Exactly. And when we say this was the most spectacular party the world had ever seen, we really need to dwell on the sheer sensory scale of what Fouquet pulled off.
Let's do it.
This wasn't just expensive. It was a curated masterpiece of cultural power designed to completely overwhelm the senses.
I mean, let's just talk about the guest list alone. The most brilliant nobility of all of Europe attended.
The brightest stars.
Right. We aren't just talking about local politicians. We are talking about the greatest minds of the time. Jean de La Fontaine, the famous poet, was there.
Yes.
François de la Rochefoucauld, the renowned author and moralist. Madame de Sévigné. I mean, these are the absolute titans of literature and society. Getting them all in one room was an administrative miracle.
It really was.
And it doesn't stop with the guest list.
Moliere.
Arguably the greatest playwright in French history. He actually wrote a custom play specifically for this single occasion.
And he was there to perform in it himself?
Right. At the evening's conclusion, think about the audacity of that. Commissioning Moliere for a one-night-only performance.
It's unbelievable. And then there's the sensory experience of the evening itself. As the carriages roll up to Vaux-le-Vicomte, the guests are greeted by this sprawling, perfectly illuminated architectural marvel.
Just torches everywhere, I imagine.
Everywhere. And the party begins with a lavish 7-course dinner. But Fouquet doesn't just serve expensive French food. He leverages his vast network of merchants and explorers to serve foods from the Orient that had literally never been tasted in France before that very night.
Wait, really? Like an entirely new ingredient?
Yes. We are talking about exotic spices, rare fruits, intricate culinary preparations that just completely bewildered and delighted the French nobility. He is introducing the king to entirely new flavors.
That's insane.
Alongside dishes that were invented solely for this event.
And as they are eating this unprecedented 7-course meal, they are listening to custom music that Fouquet commissioned specifically to honor the king. I mean, think about the logistics of this in 1661.
The expense alone is staggering.
Right. And the coordination.
Mm-hmm.
After dinner, the guests are taken on a promenade through the chateau's gardens. And these gardens aren't just pretty. They are architectural marvels of geometry.
Very structured.
Yeah, they feature perfectly aligned arrangements of shrubbery, hidden fountains, vast flower beds. And Fouquet personally walks alongside the young king, guiding him through this perfect manicured paradise.
Just showing off every detail.
Exactly. They arrive at the garden's canals, and suddenly the sky erupts. A massive fireworks display, which was an absolute rarity and a profound luxury at the time. It just illuminates the night sky.
The reflection of the explosions on the water, the sheer noise and brilliance of it, it must have been overwhelming.
And all of this is followed by Moliere's private theatrical performance.
So the evening runs well into the night, and the consensus is absolute.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in attendance agreed it was the most amazing affair they had ever attended in their lives.
A total triumph.
By all objective measures of event planning, diplomacy, and cultural display, it was a flawless, resounding success. Fouquet must have gone to bed that night thinking he had completely secured his future.
You had to have thought that.
He had demonstrated his value beyond any shadow of a doubt. He had shown the king that Nicolas Fouquet was the beating heart of French culture and power.
Okay, I want to pause here and offer an analogy for you listening, because it's so easy to dismiss this as just crazy 17th century royal behavior that has nothing to do with us.
Right, it feels very detached from modern life.
Exactly. But think about this in a modern context. Imagine you were a junior executive or maybe a mid-level director, and you were trying to impress the CEO of your company.
Okay, I'm with you.
You suspect the CEO doesn't fully appreciate your value, so you decide to host a corporate retreat. But you don't just book a nice hotel conference room, you rent out a private island in the Maldives.
Oh, wow, okay.
You fly in Michelin star chefs to cook every single meal. You hire a Grammy-winning artist to perform a private acoustic set on the beach. You invite industry titans from other companies who happen to be your personal friends to just mingle with the CEO.
You were really pulling out all the stops.
Right. You put on a display of wealth, connection, and competence that completely outclasses the CEO's own wedding. You think you're showing this CEO, look at the caliber of person you have working for you. I belong in the C-suite. Look at my network.
Well, what are you actually doing?
You are standing next to your boss, shining a massive, blinding spotlight on yourself, and making the boss look completely inadequate, poor, and disconnected by comparison.
That is precisely what happened, and it triggered a devastating psychological collapse in the monarch.
The ultimate backfire.
Exactly. What's fascinating here is the brutal, immediate irony of the aftermath. The party was universally declared the greatest ever. The very next day, Nicolas Fouquet is arrested.
Wait.
He isn't demoted. He isn't fired. He is physically arrested by the king's head musketeer, D'Artagnan.
Wait, I need to stop you there. Because if I'm Fouquet, I am completely blindsided. The party was a massive success.
Totally blindsided.
The king smiled at the fireworks. He laughed at Moliere's play. How do we get from a 7-course exotic dinner to a military arrest the very next morning?
Well, you get there by understanding the profound fragility of Louis XIV's ego. Let's examine the situation through the insecure eyes of this 22-year-old monarch.
Okay, put us in his shoes.
Throughout the entire evening, Fouquet is presenting spectacle after spectacle to Louis. The exotic food, the fireworks, the play. Fouquet thinks, I am honoring you.
Right.
But Louis is looking around that room. He sees the guests, his own subjects, his own nobility, his own friends, and he sees them bestowing appreciative smiles, awe, and admiration, not on the king, but on his finance minister.
Oh, man, that's the killer right there. It's the redirected attention.
Precisely. In that moment, it seemed to Louis that the people were more charmed by his employee than by the monarch himself. It felt like Fouquet was flaunting his wealth and power directly in the king's face.
So he felt threatened.
Completely. Fouquet wasn't flattering Louis. He was inadvertently poking massive holes in the king's vanity. He was unbalancing the master's sense of self.
And for a king, that's everything.
Exactly. A king's power relies entirely on the illusion that he is the absolute center of the universe, the sun. If a planet suddenly starts glowing brighter than the sun, the entire solar system is thrown into chaos.
He made the king doubt his own preeminence. And Louis XIV, being a proud monarch, would obviously never admit this to anyone. I mean, you don't execute a man and say, it's because he threw a better party than me and made me feel sad.
Right, that would be pathetic.
You find a convenient bureaucratic excuse.
Exactly. So 3 months later, Fouquet is put on trial for stealing from the country's treasury.
Which is convenient.
Very. And the fascinating historical footnote here is that most of the stealing Fouquet was accused of he had actually done on the king's behalf, and with the king's explicit permission to fund the monarchy's various wars and endeavors.
Oh, wow. So he was just the fall guy.
Totally. But facts do not matter when the ego is bruised. Fouquet is found guilty, and his punishment is staggering.
What happens to him?
He is sent to the most isolated, miserable prison in France, high up in the freezing Pyrenees Mountains.
Oh, that's brutal.
The man who loved lavish parties, pretty women, and poetry spends the last 20 years of his life in absolute solitary confinement.
20 years.
From the pinnacle of European society to a cold, lonely cell. Literally overnight.
But wait, so he arrests Fouquet. The threat is neutralized. But Louis doesn't stop there, does he? He intentionally hires a completely mediocre guy to replace him.
Yes, he does.
He brings in Jean-Baptiste Colbert, and from what I understand, Colbert was the most boring, joyless accountant in Paris. Why do that? That makes zero business sense.
Right.
He's sabotaging his own country's cultural standing just to protect his feelings.
Well, you are applying logical, spreadsheet-driven business sense to an emotional crisis.
Fair point.
Louis didn't need a brilliant visionary at that moment. He needed an ego buffer. He specifically chose Colbert because he was famous for his parsimony, his extreme frugality, and, honestly, for giving the dullest parties in Paris.
So he was the anti-Fouquet.
Exactly. Louis purposely surrounds himself with a man who poses zero threat to his vanity. Colbert's job was simple. Be boring, be efficient, and make sure every single drop of money liberated from the treasury went straight into Louis's hands.
And what does Louis do with all that money? Because this is where the sheer pettiness of the human ego truly shines. He sets out to build a palace that will make Vaux-le-Vicomte look like a peasant's shack.
He really does.
He builds the glorious palace of Versailles. And he doesn't just... And once it was built, Louis hosted parties at Versailles that were purposely designed to be even more extravagant than the one that cost Fouquet his freedom.
He had to prove a point.
He took Fouquet's life, took his money, took his entire creative team, and recreated his party just to prove he was the actual sun in the sky.
It is the absolute crux of the transgression. Such is the fate of all those who unbalance the master's sense of self, poke holes in his vanity, or make him doubt his preeminence.
It's terrifying.
When the evening began, Fouquet was at the top of the world. By the time the sun came up, his life was effectively over.
So we've seen the catastrophe. We've seen what happens when you misread the room so badly that you end up in a dungeon for 20 years. That's the cautionary tale.
The worst case scenario.
Right. But a rule isn't much use if we only know how to fail at it. We need to look at how this exact same psychological law can be actively manipulated for success.
Yes, we need a success story.
We need to pivot from the tragic extravagance of a finance minister to the brilliant calculating strategy of a stargazer. We are moving from 1661 France, back in time a bit, to the early 1600s in Italy.
Okay, changing scenery.
And we're going to look at the astronomer and mathematician Galileo.
Galileo is a fascinating case study because his situation was so precarious and, frankly, very relatable to anyone who has ever felt like they were constantly hustling just to survive.
Like a gig worker of the Renaissance.
Exactly. In the early 1600s, there was no National Science Foundation. There were no massive university research grants or tenured positions with guaranteed pensions.
No safety net at all.
None. Renaissance scientists, artists, and thinkers depended entirely on the generosity of great aristocratic rulers to support their work. It was essentially a high-stakes gig economy.
And the compensation structure in this gig economy was incredibly frustrating and demeaning. Scientists like Galileo operated on a system of intellectual patronage. They would invent something or discover something, and they would give it as a gift to the leading patrons of the time, hoping for a return favor. For instance, early in his career, Galileo invented a highly useful military compass.
A very practical invention.
Right, and he presents it to the Duke of Gonzaga. Then, he writes a book explaining how to use the compass, and he dedicates that book to a different powerful family, the Medicis. He is spreading his bets.
He's diversifying his portfolio, basically. And what is the result of spreading those bets? The rulers are mildly grateful. Through these connections, Galileo manages to find a few more wealthy students to tutor.
So he gets a little work out of it.
A little. But here is the critical problem. No matter how great the discovery, these patrons usually paid him with gifts, not actual cash or steady salaries.
Wait, really? Just gifts?
Yeah, he might get a nice velvet cloak, a jeweled box, maybe a basket of exotic fruit or a gold chain.
A basket of fruit for a military compass.
Exactly. And you cannot build a stable life, let alone fund expensive astronomical research on scattered trinkets.
Right. You can't pay the blacksmith for telescope parts with a basket of fruit. This created a life of constant insecurity and dependence for Galileo. He is brilliant. He is literally mapping the heavens. But he is constantly begging for patronage.
It's exhausting.
He thinks to himself, there must be an easier way. I can't keep giving my genius away for cloaks. And then in the year 1610, he hits on a new strategy, a massive epiphany.
This is the turning point.
This is the year Galileo points his newly refined telescope at the night sky and discovers the moons of Jupiter.
Now, let's look at how the old Galileo would have handled this. In the past, if he discovered 4 moons, he would have divided the discovery up to maximize his reach across different royal houses.
Spread it around again.
Right. He might give the physical telescope he used to one patron in Venice. He might dedicate a book about the moons to a second patron in Florence. He might name a star after a third patron in Rome. He scattered his intellectual capital.
Hedging his bets.
But this time, with the moons of Jupiter, he completely changes his approach. He decides to focus all of his energy, all of his intellectual capital, exclusively on one single target.
The Medicis.
Yes, the Medicis.
And he didn't pick the Medicis at random. This was a highly calculated choice based on a very specific piece of historical and psychological context.
He did his homework.
He absolutely did. Shortly after Cosimo I had established the Medici dynasty back in 1540, he had officially made Jupiter the mightiest of the Roman gods, the absolute symbol of the Medici family.
Right.
It was a symbol of power that transcended mere politics and banking. It linked their family directly to ancient Rome and its divinities. Jupiter was the Medici brand.
It was their corporate logo, essentially. So Galileo takes this astronomical discovery, and he engineers what is arguably the most brilliant cosmic public relations campaign in human history.
It's genius.
He doesn't just publish a scientific paper saying, "I found some rocks orbiting a gas giant, please send money." He turns the discovery of Jupiter's moons into a divine cosmic event that exists solely to honor the greatness of the Medicis.
The spin he puts on this is absolutely masterful. Shortly after the discovery, Galileo makes a highly publicized announcement. He claims that the bright stars, meaning the 4 moons of Jupiter, literally offered themselves in the heavens to his telescope at the exact same time as Cosimo II was being enthroned.
What a coincidence.
Right. He is suggesting that the universe itself, the literal cosmos, is celebrating the Medici succession.
And gets even more specific and, frankly, more shamelessly flattering. He points out that the number of the moons is exactly 4. Well, Cosimo II happens to have 3 brothers.
Making 4 Medici sons.
Exactly. Galileo argues that these 4 moons harmonize perfectly with the 4 suns. And just as the 4 moons orbit the massive planet Jupiter, the 4 Medici sons revolve around Cosimo II, the mighty founder of the dynasty who was symbolized by Jupiter.
He actually says this is more than a scientific coincidence. He claims this astronomical reality is proof that the heavens themselves reflect the ascendancy of the Medici family.
He's weaving this incredible narrative.
And he doesn't stop with words. After dedicating the discovery to them, Galileo commissions a custom visual emblem. It's a representation of the god Jupiter sitting on a cloud, with 4 stars circling around him.
Wow.
He presents this custom emblem to Cosimo II as a tangible symbol of his family's link to the stars. I want to use another modern analogy here to really drive home how audacious this was.
Let's hear it.
Imagine a modern tech startup. They've just developed the most revolutionary, world-changing artificial intelligence algorithm ever created. It's going to cure diseases, it's going to map the human genome, it's going to change human history.
Okay, a huge breakthrough.
Massive. But instead of naming it after themselves or giving it a cool futuristic name like Genesis or Apex, they name it directly after the primary venture capitalist who is funding them. Let's call him Bob.
Bob the VC.
Right. They name the algorithm the Bob Protocol. And they go to the press and say, we didn't really invent this. The sheer financial genius and aura of Bob manifested this algorithm into reality. The code practically wrote itself in his presence.
That is hilarious.
They're effectively giving the investor naming rights to a piece of human evolution.
That is exactly the dynamic. And what is the actual result of this extreme flattery? What was the payoff for Galileo?
What did he get for it?
It was immediate, absolute, and life-changing. In 1610, Cosimo II makes Galileo his official court philosopher and mathematician.
Their real title.
And the crucial detail, it comes with a full, guaranteed lifetime salary.
Oh, wow. No more velvet cloaks.
Exactly. It was the absolute coup of a lifetime for scientists. The days of begging for patronage, the days of living in constant insecurity, the days of accepting fruit instead of cash, they were permanently over.
So let's look at the underlying mechanism here. Why did this work so flawlessly? What did Galileo understand about the ego of a master that Fouquet completely missed? In one stroke, Galileo gained more with this strategy than in years of begging. Why?
Because Galileo understood the psychology of imposter syndrome that plagues almost all people in power. We have to realize a harsh truth here. Masters, patrons, bosses, They don't fundamentally care about the intricate details of your latest invention or your clean cone or your brilliant marketing strategy.
They don't care about the work itself.
Not really. They care about their own legacy. They care about their glory. A CEO or a patron knows deep down that they are just the person with the money. They aren't the genius. They aren't the creative force.
Right, they just sign the checks.
And that creates a deep, gnawing vulnerability. It makes the boss feel like they are just a piggy bank, which is an ugly, ignoble, transactional job.
So if you just walk into the CEO's office and drop a brilliant, game-changing invention on their desk and say, look how smart I am, I solved the problem, you aren't actually making them happy.
No, you are highlighting their lack of brilliance. You are reminding them that they are just the wallet and you are the brain.
That makes so much sense.
The producer of a great work, the boss, the patron, wants to feel that they are more than just the provider of funds. They want to appear creative and powerful. They want to feel that their leadership, their vision, is what allowed the work to happen.
They want to be the muse.
Exactly. If you just hand them an invention, you give them insecurity. But Galileo gave the Medicis infinitely more glory by linking their name with cosmic forces than he ever could have by just handing them a new telescope.
He elevated them.
Galileo didn't challenge the intellectual authority of the Medicis. He didn't make them feel inferior. By literally aligning them with the stars, he made them shine brilliantly among all the courts of Italy. He did not outshine the master. He made the master outshine all others.
It is the perfect, flawless observance of the law. You take your own brilliance, your own hard work, and you use it as a spotlight to illuminate the person above you. And in return, they give you the security and power you need to continue your work in peace. You sacrifice the immediate credit for long-term power.
Precisely. That is the trade-off.
Okay, so far we've looked at two very distinct actions. Fouquet actively threw a party that was too lavish. Galileo actively designed a PR campaign to flatter his patron.
Mm-hmm.
In both cases, there was a conscious, deliberate action taken by the subordinate.
Very deliberate, yes.
And as a listener, you might be thinking, okay, I get it. I just won't throw a massive $1 million party to show up my boss, and I won't go around demanding credit for everything. I'll just keep my head down, do my job, be my natural, charming self, and I'll be fine.
And that is where this law becomes truly terrifying, because you do not need to take a massive, deliberate action to violate this rule.
Wait, really?
Oh, absolutely. You can inadvertently outshine a master simply by existing. You can trigger their live grenade ego just by being naturally talented, naturally charismatic, or simply by getting a little too comfortable in your position.
Let's look at a story that illustrates the sheer, brutal unfairness of this dynamic. Because this next one is wild. We are going to look at a man named Astorre Manfredi. He was the Prince of Faenza, Italy, around the year 1500.
Yes, the young prince.
Now, Astorre was dealt an incredibly good hand in life. He was born with more natural talents than almost anyone. He was widely considered the most handsome of all the young princes of Italy.
Just a naturally gifted kid.
Right. He captivated his subjects effortlessly. He was naturally generous. He had an open, radiant spirit. People just loved him. He didn't have to try. He didn't have to hire a PR firm. It was effortless charm.
But then a very dark cloud enters his life in the form of Caesar Borgia.
And Borgia is bad news.
Borgia was one of the most ruthless, cunning, and cold-blooded conquerors of the era. He was driven by a dark, relentless paranoia. So in the year 1500, Caesar Borgia marches his army to Faenza and lays siege to the city.
And the people must have been terrified.
Absolutely. When the city finally surrenders, the citizens expect the absolute worst from Borgia, who has a well-earned reputation for brutality and slaughter.
But surprisingly, Borgia decides to spare the town. He occupies the fortress, but he doesn't execute any citizens. More importantly, he allows Prince Manfredi, who was only 18 years old at the time, to remain with his court in complete freedom.
It seems like a miracle.
It does. A brutal conqueror showing uncharacteristic mercy to a young, beloved prince. Maybe Borgia is softening in his old age. But the mercy is an absolute illusion.
A total trap.
A few weeks later, Borgia's soldiers suddenly storm Manfredi's quarters and haul the young prince away to a dark prison in Rome. He spends a year locked up in miserable conditions, and then a year after that, his body is fished out of the river Tiber with a stone tied around his neck.
It is a cold, calculated murder. Now, of course, Borgia justified this horrible deed publicly. I mean, he couldn't just say he murdered a kid for being well-liked.
Right, he needed a pretense.
So he came up with trumped-up charges of treason and secret conspiracies. But if we peel back the historical PR and look at the true psychological motive, The real problem wasn't treason. The real problem was Cesar Borgia's monstrous vanity.
The young man was outshining Borgia without even trying. Think about it. Borgia is this feared, dark, brooding conqueror who holds power through terror.
Yes.
And Manfredi is this radiant, handsome, 18-year-old kid who naturally emanates generosity and charm and holds power through genuine affection. Given Manfredi's innate talents, his mere presence in the same room made Borgia seem less attractive, less charismatic, and more villainous by comparison.
And Borgia couldn't handle the contrast.
Manfredi didn't throw a party, he didn't plot, he just existed.
Okay, I have to stop here, because if I'm listening to this, I'm feeling a sense of deep frustration, maybe even anger.
That's very unjust.
What is the practical lesson here? If you are naturally gifted, if you're naturally charismatic or physically attractive or just inherently good at what you do, are you just doomed?
It feels like a lose-lose situation. Do you have to walk around apologizing for your genetics and your natural disposition? How does a modern listener apply this without losing their mind?
It is a harsh reality to accept, but the lesson drawn from Manfredi's death is simple. If you cannot help being charming and superior, you must learn to avoid monsters of vanity entirely.
Just stay away from them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you identify a Cesar Borgia in your workplace, a boss whose insecurity is so monstrous that they resent the natural light of others, your first priority should be to transfer departments or find a new job. Run.
Get out of there.
But if you cannot avoid them, if you are stuck in their orbit for financial or career reasons, you have no choice. You must find a way to actively mute your good qualities when you are in their company. You have to dim your own light to survive.
Let's anchor that to the modern day. How exactly do you dim your light in a Zoom meeting or a corporate boardroom?
It's subtle but important.
It means if you are naturally the funniest person in the room, you swallow your jokes when the insecure VP is talking. If you are incredibly stylish and charismatic, and you know the CEO is frumpy and awkward, maybe you intentionally dress down a bit in neutral colors when you have a one-on-one.
Yes, exactly.
You shrink your physical footprint.
Yeah.
You intentionally speak 20% less.
Mm-hmm.
You do not let your natural radiance cast a shadow on their insecurities.
Exactly. It's the curse of natural charm. And it leads us to another subtle danger. It's not just about your natural traits, it's about your mindset.
How so?
It's about the danger of overstepping, of getting too comfortable. With a man named Senno Rikyu.
Rikyu's story is fascinating. He was the premier artist of the tea ceremony. Now, to understand this, we have to understand that in late 1500s Japan, the tea ceremony wasn't just a casual beverage service.
No, it was deeply serious.
It wasn't just pouring hot water over leaves. It had become an absolute obsession with the nobility. It was a profound cultural, aesthetic, and spiritual practice. It was the highest form of art.
And Rikyu had mastered it so completely that he became one of the most trusted advisors to Emperor Hideyoshi himself.
He had reached the absolute pinnacle of society.
He really had. He had his own private apartment inside the royal palace. He was honored and revered throughout all of Japan. He was a man born a peasant who had risen to the very heights of the empire, based solely on his incredible artistic skill.
He was the ultimate self-made man.
But then, in 1591, disaster strikes out of nowhere. Emperor Hideyoshi suddenly has Rikyu arrested and sentenced to death. Ultimately, Rikyu takes his own life instead of facing execution.
The suddenness of this fall from grace is shocking. Why did the emperor suddenly turn on his most trusted, brilliant advisor?
The cause for this sudden, fatal change in fortune was discovered later, and it all revolves around an astonishing act of hubris. It turns out that Rikyu had commissioned a wooden statue of himself. And in this statue, he was depicted wearing sandals.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Wearing sandals doesn't sound like a capital offense. It sounds like a Tuesday in July.
Right, it sounds completely harmless to us.
But what's wild about this is the cultural context. In 1500s Japan, those specific sandals weren't just footwear. They were a heavily guarded symbol of high nobility.
Exactly. Rikyu, a man born a peasant, has a statue made of himself wearing the footwear of royalty, posing loftily. But he doesn't just keep this statue in his bedroom or his private studio.
No, he puts it on display.
He places it in the most important temple inside the palace gates, perfectly positioned in clear sight of the actual royalty who would walk by it every single day.
It is an unbelievable miscalculation. It's the modern equivalent of a junior VP who grew up poor but had a few good sales quarters, deciding to park their leased sports car in the CEO's personally reserved parking spot while openly wearing a knockoff of the CEO's custom Rolex.
That is a great analogy.
It's a territorial violation. When Emperor Hideyoshi saw this statue, the message was crystal clear. To the emperor, this statue signified that Rikyū had lost all sense of limits. Rikyū was presuming that he naturally possessed the same rights as the highest nobility.
He crossed a massive invisible line.
He had fallen into the trap of the self-made man. He had come to believe that he had earned his status entirely on his own merit, through his own artistic genius. He completely forgot that his exalted position, his apartment, his influence, it all depended entirely on the continued favor of the emperor.
It was an unforgivable miscalculation of his own importance, and he paid for it with his life. The warning derived from Rikyū's fate is vital. Never take your position for granted, and never let any favors you receive go to your head.
You always have to remember who put you there.
Exactly. Just because the master loves you today, just because you are the favorite right now, does not mean you have the freedom to act independently of their shadow.
Okay, we have covered a lot of intense historical ground. We've seen a finance minister imprisoned for throwing a party. We've seen an astronomer secure his future by naming planets after a patron's brand.
We've seen some extreme outcomes.
We've seen a prince murdered for being too handsome, and a pea master ordered to die over a wooden statue wearing sandals. These are extreme, life-or-death historical examples. But as we promised at the beginning, the mission of this deep dive is to translate these historical extremes into a practical, everyday playbook.
Right. How do we actually use this today?
How do you, the listener, apply this law safely in your own life? How do you navigate the shadows of your own workplace without ending up metaphorically in the Pyrenees?
We have to start by accepting a foundational, unflinching premise about human nature: the absolute inevitability of envy.
Envy is just everywhere.
Everyone has insecurities. It doesn't matter how confident your boss projects themselves to be. They have imposter syndrome. They have doubts. When you show yourself in the world, when you naturally display your talents and work hard, you are going to stir up resentment.
It's basically a law of physics for humans.
Exactly. You are going to stir up envy. It is a biological certainty of primate hierarchies.
And we get a little bit of grace here. You cannot spend your life worrying about the petty feelings of every single person you meet. You drive yourself crazy trying to manage the emotions of everyone in your department.
Yeah, that would be exhausting.
If your peers or your subordinates are envious of you, that's their problem. But, and this is the massive, bolded, underlined but with those above you, you must take an entirely different approach.
Because they have the power to destroy you.
Yes. When it comes to managing the people who hold power over you, outshining them is the worst, most fatal mistake you can make.
Do not fool yourself into thinking that life has changed much since the days of Louis XIV and the Medicis. The clothing has changed, the technology has changed. We use Slack instead of wax seals. But the human brain hasn't evolved past its base insecurities.
We are exactly the same.
People who attain high standing today, CEOs, senior partners, department heads, they are psychologically identical to kings and queens. They desperately want to feel secure in their positions, and they want to feel superior to those around them in intelligence, in wit, and in charm.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of the meritocracy illusion. We think, if I just show them how brilliant I am, they will love me and promote me. It's a deadly but common misperception.
It really is.
You believe that by displaying and vaunting your gifts, you are winning the master's affection. But you aren't. They might smile, they might feign appreciation in the quarterly review, but at the very first opportunity, they will replace you.
They'll find someone safer.
They will find someone less intelligent, less attractive, and less threatening, just like Louis XIV replaced the sparkling Fouquet with the incredibly boring Colbert. And they will never, ever tell you the real reason.
Knowing this danger is half the battle. The other half is actively turning this psychological vulnerability to your advantage. There is a suite of actionable tactics for what we can call discreet flattery.
Ooh, discreet flattery. I like the sound of that.
Now, overt flattery, just blatantly kissing up to the boss, telling them their bad ideas are genius, has limits. It's too direct, it's obvious, and frankly, it makes you look weak and sycophantic to your peers.
People see right through it.
Exactly. Discreet flattery is much more powerful, much more subtle, and much more manipulative.
Let's break down these tactics with some real-world applications. The first approach is to play naive.
Playing dumb, essentially.
If you are naturally more intelligent or more experienced than your master in a certain area, you must seem the opposite. You must actively make them appear more intelligent than you. For example, imagine you are a highly skilled senior developer. You've been coding in a specific language for 10 years. Your new CTO is a business guy who barely understands the architecture.
Okay, very common scenario.
You find a massive bug in the system. You know exactly how to fix it in 5 minutes.
The instinct is to fix it, go to the CTO and say, I saved the day, here is my brilliant solution. But that highlights his ignorance.
Exactly. Instead, you commit a harmless mistake. You go to the CTO with the problem, and you present 2 possible solutions, one of which is clearly slightly flawed. You ask for his strategic vision on which path to take.
I see.
You let him point out the flaw. You let him choose the correct path. You essentially let him discover the solution you already had.
Masters adore such requests. By asking for their help on a minor issue, you are validating their experience. You are making them feel wise and necessary.
You give them an easy win.
Exactly. A master who cannot bestow the gifts of their experience upon you may start directing rancor and ill will at you instead. They need to feel like they are mentoring you, even if you are secretly mentoring them.
But what happens when the disparity isn't just about experience? What if you are fundamentally more creative? This requires the next tactic, ascribing creativity.
This one is crucial.
Let's say you genuinely have the million-dollar marketing idea. Your boss completely missed. You can't just play naive there. You come up with a brilliant strategy that will double quarterly revenue. You do not stand up in the all-hands meeting and say, look at this amazing idea I just had.
No, because that's the Fouquet party all over again.
Exactly. Instead, you must ascribe your creative ideas to the boss, and you must do it in as public a manner as possible. You stand up in the meeting and say, following up on the brilliant strategic direction Sarah laid out last quarter regarding market expansion, I've developed a tactical execution plan that builds on her vision.
Brilliant.
You make it explicitly clear to the rest of the team that your brilliant advice is merely an echo of the boss's original guidance. You plant the seed so they can harvest the credit.
And then we have the social dynamics. Playing the jester. Let's say you surpass your master in wit and charisma. You are naturally funnier, quicker. You are the charismatic sales rep who can hold court at the client dinner.
Everyone loves you.
And your VP is dull, dry, and awkward. It is okay to be funny, but you cannot make the boss appear cold or surly by comparison. If you realize you are dominating the room and everyone is looking at you, you must immediately tone down your humor.
You play the straight man to their comedian. You intentionally set up a story where you know the VP has a rehearsed punchline. You lob them the softballs. You must find ways to set up the boss so that they seem to be the true dispenser of amusement and good cheer.
And finally, a direct callback to the tragedy of Nicolas Fouquet. Hiding your wealth and generosity.
Don't show off the money.
If you are naturally more sociable, or if you simply come from money and have more resources than your boss, be incredibly careful not to be the cloud that blocks their radiance. The master must appear as the sun around which everyone revolves.
Imagine you have to entertain your boss. Say they invite themselves over to your house for dinner. Do not hire a caterer. Do not bring out the $500 bottle of wine you got for your anniversary.
Put away the expensive art.
Do not show off your pristine art collection. Display your limited means to win their sympathy. Serve a modest meal. Ask for their advice on a cheap wine. Any attempt to impress them with your grace and generosity can prove fatal because it reminds them that they do not control you completely. Okay, I have to jump in here again and voice the intense frustration that I'm sure you, the listener, are feeling right now.
It's a lot to swallow.
Listen, this sounds incredibly degrading. It sounds toxic. If my ideas are genuinely more creative and I have to publicly ascribe them all to my boss, how do I ever get recognized? How do I ever get promoted?
It feels like you're erasing yourself.
Don't I just become this invisible, pathetic idea machine forever? Yeah. Am I just supposed to pretend to be a dull, naive idiot for the rest of my career?
It is a completely valid frustration, and it feels antithetical to everything modern culture teaches us about self-advocacy and, bringing your whole self to work. But we have to reframe this behavior. Disguising your strengths in this manner is not a weakness, provided that in the end it leads to power. By willfully letting others outshine you temporarily, you remain in absolute control of the situation.
I see. You are pulling the strings behind the curtain.
Exactly. You are managing their psychology rather than becoming a helpless victim of their sudden, unpredictable insecurity. It's a long game. It's about surviving the current hierarchy so you can eventually ascend it.
You have to survive to advance.
Think back to Galileo. He didn't lose by flattering the Medicis. He won a lifetime salary and the freedom to map the solar system. If you can make your master shine even more in the eyes of others, you become viewed as a godsend. You become indispensable.
And paradoxically, that is what gets you pulled up the ladder. They bring you with them because you make them look so good.
Precisely.
There is a beautiful, haunting metaphor for this entire philosophy, drawn from the 17th century philosopher Balthazar Gracian. He calls it the stars in the sky.
I love this imagery.
He writes, there can be only one sun at a time. The rule is to never obscure the sunlight or rival the sun's brilliance. Rather, you must fade into the sky and find ways to heighten the master star's intensity.
Fade into the sky.
Gracian says that all superiority is odious, but the superiority of a subject over his prince is not only stupid, it is fatal. He says the stars in the sky teach us this lesson. They may be related to the sun, and they might be just as brilliant in reality, but they never, ever appear in her company. Fade into the sky.
It's a perfect image. But in the study of power dynamics, there are rarely absolute rules without exceptions.
Oh, there's a loophole.
Always. We've established the ironclad nature of Law 1. But what happens if the master, the sun in your sky, is actually losing their power?
This is where we shift from defensive survival maneuvers to offensive strategy. We enter the reversal. We mentioned earlier that you cannot spend your life worrying about upsetting every person you meet. You have to be selective. And as you evaluate the hierarchy, you must also be selectively cruel.
This raises the critical question of timing. How do you know when it's safe to stop flattering and start attacking? How do you evaluate the actual structural strength of your superior?
It's like a psychological chess match.
It is. You have to read the board. There are 3 very specific scenarios, 3 distinct types of masters, and you must handle each one differently.
Let's walk through these. The first scenario is the falling star. You look at your boss and you realize their power is rapidly waning. Let's say you are an ambitious director and your VP of sales is consistently missing quotas.
They're on the way out.
They're making strategic mistakes. They're losing favor with the CEO. The industry technology is passing them by. If they are a falling star, the rule reverses entirely. There is suddenly nothing to fear from outshining them.
In fact, you must be merciless. Remember, your master likely had no scruples in their own cold-blooded climb to the top. Why should you protect them now?
Good point.
If you gauge their strength and realize they are genuinely weak, your strategy should be to discreetly hasten their downfall.
But how do you do that without leaving fingerprints? You don't yell at them in a meeting. You don't openly stage a coup.
No, you let the contrast do the work.
Right. When the VP presents a flawed strategy in the executive meeting, you don't save them. You present a flawlessly executed counterproposal. You outdo them. You outcharm the clients they are alienating.
You step into the void they're leaving.
You outsmart them at key moments. You let everyone in the room see the glaring, undeniable contrast between your rising competence and their declining, desperate ability. You become the obvious replacement.
But the second scenario requires a much more delicate touch. This is the very weak star. This is a superior who is already collapsing. The writing is not just on the wall. The resignation letter is being drafted.
They are totally finished.
Let's say the VP has been officially fired, or they're being forced into early retirement, and they are literally packing their desk. Everyone knows they're done. If they are very weak and ready to fall, your strategy changes completely. You actually back off. You let nature take its course.
Why back off? If they are weak, shouldn't I crush them to prove my dominance?
No. Because if you aggressively outshine or attack a master who is already pathetic and defeated, you don't look powerful. You look cruel.
You look like a bully.
Exactly. You look spiteful, vindictive, and petty to the onlookers. And those onlookers are the very peers and subordinates you will need to support you once you take the boss's job.
You need their respect.
You don't need to push a man who is already falling off a cliff. Just let gravity do the work. Offer them a box for their things. Be gracious in their defeat, because your victory is already assured.
And finally, the third scenario, which is the most common and the most frustrating, the firm master. What if your boss is completely secure in their position, their power is absolute, they have the full backing of the board, but you privately know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are more capable, more intelligent, and more creative?
This is the hardest one to swallow.
If the master is firm, the original law holds absolute. You must be patient. You must bide your time. There is a philosophical comfort to be found here. It is the natural course of all human endeavors that power eventually fades and weakens.
Nobody rules forever.
Tides turn. Your master will age, they will make a mistake, or they will move on. And if you play the game correctly, If you survive by masking your brilliance and avoiding their envious wrath, you will eventually outlive them, and someday you will outshine them.
Just waiting for the right moment.
It reminds me of surfing. If you are paddling out into the ocean and you see a massive, overpowering 40-foot wave coming right at you, that's the firm master. You do not try to paddle against it or stand up and prove how strong you are. It will crush you into the reef.
You have to yield to it.
You duck dive under it. You hold your breath and you survive. But if you see a wave that is already cresting and starting to break, losing its form, that's the falling star, you paddle hard, you catch it, and you ride its momentum to the shore.
That's brilliant.
And if you see a tiny little ripple dying out on the beach, the very weak star, you don't even bother wasting your energy kicking at it. You just stand there and watch it fade away into the sand.
That is a perfect encapsulation of the strategy. You are constantly reading the currents of power, managing the egos above you, and deploying your own brilliance only when the environment is perfectly calibrated for your success. You are an architect of your own rise, not a victim of someone else's insecurity.
So let's synthesize this incredible sweeping journey we've been on today. We started in the opulent, doomed, firework-lit gardens of Nicolas Fouquet, a man who thought his sheer brilliance and immense wealth would save him, only to find it was the exact light that blinded and enraged his insecure king.
It's such a tragic story.
We watched Galileo brilliantly manipulate the cosmic divine ego of the Medicis, securing his future and his salary, not with better science, but with masterclass flattery.
He played the game perfectly.
We mourn the tragic, unavoidable ends of Astor Manfredi and Senno Ricciu, men destroyed simply by their natural charm or a momentary fatal lapse into pride.
We've broken down the tactical reality of discreet flattery in the modern world. Playing naive so the boss can play savior. Ascribing your creativity to others to plant the seeds of your own rise.
Dimming your natural radiance to ensure the master feels like the sun.
And we've examined the ruthless calculus of the reversal. Knowing exactly when to strike a falling star, when to show mercy to a weak one, and when to patiently duck dive under a firm master.
The ultimate takeaway here isn't just about managing other people's egos. It's about mastering your own. It takes immense self-discipline, incredible emotional control to suppress your own biological desire for immediate recognition.
It goes against all our instincts.
To sit in a meeting and let someone else take the credit for your sleepless nights, all in service of a longer, more secure game.
And that control is the true essence of power. You aren't a helpless cog in the hierarchy. You are an architect navigating within it, fully aware of the structural loads, the weight-bearing walls, and the psychological weak points of everyone around you.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly terrifying thought for you, the listener. We've spent this entire time dissecting the insecurities of those above you. We've talked entirely about how to manage your master.
But the tables always turn.
Power, as we've noted, eventually shifts. The wave breaks. What happens on the day that you finally become the master? When you have outlived your superiors, when you've played the game perfectly, duck-dived the waves, and you are finally sitting at the absolute top of the hierarchy.
When you are the one in charge.
You are the Sun King in your own organization. When that day comes, when you hold the purse strings and the power, will your own hidden insecurities, the imposter syndrome you've harbored all these years, force you to surround yourself with dull, uninspiring, boring people just to protect your fragile ego, like Louis XIV did with Colbert?
It's a real danger.
Will you fire the first person who throws a better party than you? Or will you be secure enough, strong enough, and self-aware enough to let the stars around you actually shine?
That's the real test.
Human dynamics are far more terrifying than the simple, predictable laws of gravity. But once you understand the physics of the ego, you stop falling and you start flying. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the source material.